Okay, so we're going to go ahead and walk through a sample budget for a foundation or corporate grant. Typically, this would be more of a foundation or corporate grant because government grants come with their own template that they want you to use. And sometimes foundation and corporate budgets do as well, come with a template, but often they don't. And this is a template that we've designed at Jody Riley Consulting. We find that it incorporates all of the elements that funders are typically looking for in a budget, and we get very few questions back to us regarding the budget when we use this template. So that is what we're going to show you today. We'll start at the top. We always use either Google Sheets or Excel to create budgets. It just makes a cleaner budget form, and also does some of the math for you if you set up formulas. So at the top here, we just identified that this is the 2022 program budget for the Happy Horses program. And we've created a fake entity here, a fake nonprofit organization called ABC Inc. And then they have a program called Happy Horses Program. And that is the program that we're requesting funding for this particular grant. So our next line down is going to be for support and revenue. And we have three columns that we want to break out the support and revenue by where it kind of stands. So committed is cash in hand, or as good as cash in hand or money in hand. That is your donations or things that have already been received, and it's in the bank or it's been promised to you in writing. Those are committed funds. Anticipated means you're hoping for those funds. So in the case of this, our grant funds especially would be anticipated because we're hoping to get those funds. And then the grand total over here for all categories. So under support and revenue, we start with cash contributions. Cash contributions in this case mean anything that is given to your organization, donated, any money that is given to your organization. So things that go under this category are donations, grants, and special events or fundraisers. So we'll start with donations for our fake program here, Happy Horses. We have a donor that has committed $15,000, and we have that in our possession, so it's under committed. We are requesting a grant from XYZ Foundation for $50,000. So this is that particular grant request, and the $50,000 goes here. And then for special events, we're hoping to bring in about $867.50 in fundraisers or whatever kind of special events that we have, so that can kind of round out all of those numbers. The next category down under support and revenue is in-kind contributions. In-kind contributions are typically items that have a monetary value, but that you aren't necessarily something that cash is being dealt with for. So things like volunteer labor, rent that are for a facility that's been given to you, or donated items or equipment are going to go under in-kind contributions. They still affect the bottom line of the program and reduce the amount of money needed for expenses or offset the expenses, but they're in kind because they're not dealing in cash. So here we have volunteers, general labor. And before we jump into this, I just want to point out real quick that volunteer hours for general labor over here under the budget justification narrative are explained. And this is really where we focus on explaining all of these in-kind contributions. So we'll get to that in just a second. Volunteers, general labor, we're hoping for about 1,500 hours over the course of the year, an hourly rate of $17 an hour, which is the value of volunteer time, the estimated value of volunteer time in Florida currently for 2022. And then we're also going to have some professional volunteers. We're going to need about 25 of their hours, and we projected an hourly rate at $62 an hour. Now, the difference between the two, general volunteers are just anyone that kind of comes in off the street and volunteers for your programs. Professional volunteers are lending their professional abilities or their skills or professional licensure to provide a service to your organization at no cost that they would typically charge for. So think about people like a lawyer, a CPA, maybe a general contractor, a licensed instructor, anyone like that is going to be considered a professional volunteer. So the value of our professional volunteer time is a little bit higher, and the value of professional volunteer time currently in Florida, where our fake program exists, for 2022 is $62 an hour. So that is how we get these numbers here. 25 hours times 62 gives us $1,550, and 1,500 times an hourly rate of 17 gives us $25,500. That is also explained over here in detail in the budget justification narrative. Rent of barn and facilities is our next in-kind contribution, and that is estimated at an estimated value of $114,000. For this fake program, the barn and facilities is being donated to us, so that is an in-kind contribution. To jump over here real quick to the budget narrative, the budget justification narrative, this explains that volunteer hours for general labor are calculated at 1,500 hours times state of Florida 2022 value of volunteer time as $17 an hour equals 25,500 in-kind value. This same calculation is here for professional volunteer time, and then also for in-kind value of rent, which is calculated based on Florida Department of Agriculture formula for valuation. Assessment property value of $475 divided per acre, and we're able to access 5 acres equals $95,000 times 10% of that valuation times 12 months equals $114,000. And so essentially we went on the Department of Agriculture website for Florida, got the formula for valuation, and we got the assessed value, which is 475, divided that by each acre that we're accessing, and then 10%, which is basically what you pay in rent each month based on the value of the property. So each state is going to have their own kind of budget justification there, but that's basically how it works here in Florida. So that is where that justification comes from. Now, earned income is the next category under support and revenue. And for earned income, we have equine instructors and professional training. And what earned income means is it's also referred to as social enterprise. That is when you have income that is being brought in by a service or a good that you're providing to make money for the program. So in this case, we've got equine instructors that are able to provide private lessons and we're hoping to make about $30,000 through private lessons. So that brings our total support and revenue to, total earned income to $30,000. We have professional training available, but we don't project any of that taking place for the revenue of this program. Total support and revenue that is committed is $129,000. Total support and revenue anticipated is $107,917.50, brings us to a grand total of $236,917.50. Under expenses, we'll go down to expenses now. So the first expenses we're going to start with are personnel. And how this is calculated, it's a little bit complicated, but we'll get through it, is by thinking about the FTE. The FTE, or the full-time equivalent, is the projection of how many hours each position is going to spend on only this program. So if you have 4 programs and everyone's time is divided by those 4 programs, everybody's time in each program is 25% or decimal 0.25. For this particular Happy Horses program, our executive director is going to spend about 25% of his or her time at a salary of $40,000 a year, which means $10,000 of that is devoted to this program. Our program director is going to spend 50% of his or her time, or 0.5 of her FTE, his or her FTE or time, with a salary of $38,000 a year, which brings us to about $19,000. And then our support staff is going to spend about 50% of their time, and this could be admin or whoever you've got in the support position, 50% of their time at a salary of $20,000 a year, brings us to $10,000 for this program. Our subtotal of personnel expenses is $39,000. We're going to times that by our fringe benefits, which is your FICA, your health insurance, whatever you provide that's extra on top of salary, at $77,800, brings us to a total for personnel of $46,800. Over here, we have a new category, or a new column rather, for the grant request. This is where we're showcasing what exactly we're asking the funder to pay for. So out of these funds, we're not going to ask the funder to pay 100% of this, right? We want their money to go through some other things as well, and they've identified they only want to do part of it as personnel or whatever the case may be. But anyways, we're requesting that their contribution contribute to the payment of the program director and the support staff for this program, and also for their fringe benefits. Again, that's times the 20%. brings us to a total out of the 46,800. The grant will cover 34,800 of that. Okay, the other expenses, non-personnel. We have professional dues, 1099 contractor payments, rent, insurance, utilities, curriculum fees, marketing, horse and animal feed, horse and animal care, supplies, equipment, travel, in-kind expenses, and total non-personnel, and then totals. So you can change these categories to whatever they need to be. It doesn't have to stay this way, but it is, you just need to be clear about what the expenses are and what they're for and how they're tied to the project. So for us, we've got $1,000 in professional dues, and we're going to request that from the grant funder. So that goes into column F here. Remember, that's for the grant request. So anything that we're requesting from the funder is going here, and our total expense for that item is going in column E. 1099 contractor payments, we're not requesting anything from the funder, but it's costing us about $4,000. Rent is an in-kind expense, so it kind of zeroes out, and that is $114,000. Insurance is $800. Utilities projected at $1,100. Curriculum fees at $1,200. Marketing at $2,000. And all along here, we didn't request any of that from the grant funder. Now we're going to ask them for some stuff. So horse and animal feed, out of the $6,000, we've asked them for $5,200. So horse and animal care, we've asked them out of $2,500 to support that entirely, and that is going to be $2,500. For supplies, we've also, again, requested that the grant funder supply that and equipment as well. $5,000 and $5,000. We've also got travel on here. I always put a little bit in the travel line item just because you never know when you're going to need to go to training or do something. So it's always good to have a little bit in there, although we're not requesting any of it from the grant funder. And then in-kind expense for volunteers, which again, we're just zeroing out the value of volunteer time there. And total non-personnel expenses are going to be $166,000 and $166,650. Of that, we are requesting $15,200 from the funder. So how you get to the next line is by adding the personnel expenses plus the non-personnel expenses to get your total direct expenses, which for the total, it's going to be $213,450. The grant request is now at $50,000. That's this number, $34,800 plus this number, $15,200 to equal $50,000, which is the maximum grant request. We're calculating indirect here. I wanted to show you this. For this example, this may be a funder that doesn't allow indirect, or we've already used up the money in other ways. You can calculate indirect, and a lot of funders will allow you to use indirect in your program budget. Indirect fees are the fees that are allocated to things that are not necessarily clear or black and white in a grant expense budget. So for example, things like your office, your administrative office utilities, or your bookkeeper, who's not exactly billed to one project. She kind of oversees the entire organization. So all of those little expenses that have to happen for the programs to run, but aren't really programmatic in nature, are covered under indirect or admin. Sometimes they call this admin fees as well, or admin expenses. But I like the term indirect. I think that's more commonly used. I recommend never going over 15% in indirect on a budget. A lot of funders will give you a limit of 10% or 12%. Commonly, they don't go over 15. So our base over here is going to be $213,450 times 15% equals $23,467.50. Adding these two numbers together gives us a grand total of $236,917.50. If that number looks familiar, that is because that is exactly the same number up here. And that is very important. We need our budgets to match or balance. So your support and revenue here, your total support and revenue needs to match your total program direct and indirect expenses in the same turn. Your budget total expenses here, what you're asking for, needs to match here. $50,000 is your request. So that's basically how the budget works. The really important things to note are the what in kind means, and then also what indirect means. So those are the biggest takeaways from how to do a program budget and how to understand what the funder is looking for exactly. So um, that is our review of a program or project budget for a foundation or corporate grant.